I told my in-laws their son is not the man they think he is. I'd been married to their son Ryan for 4 years. From the outside, it looked like a good marriage because Ryan was meticulous about what the outside looked like. Remembered everyone's birthdays, called his mom every Sunday. His parents Carol and Bill adored him in that complete, unquestioning way that made me understand early on there was no version of events where they'd ever see him clearly. I'd made my peace with that and kept my distance and managed everything quietly on my own. What I couldn't manage was my sister-in-law Jen finding the photos. She'd borrowed my phone at Christmas to call her husband because hers had died and she'd seen a folder before I could say anything. I watched her face change while she was standing in her parents' kitchen, holding my phone. Photos I'd taken for documentation purposes over 8 months. Bruises mostly. She looked at me and didn't say a word, but her eyes were asking a question she already knew the answer to. She called me 3 days later and asked how long. I told her. She cried and I didn't because I'd run out of that a long time ago. She said she wouldn't say anything until I was ready. What I didn't know was that Carol had seen Jen's face that day in the kitchen and had been asking questions ever since. She called a family dinner last Sunday, framed it as catching up. I knew when I walked in and saw Carol's expression that it wasn't catching up. Carol waited until we were all eating and said she needed to ask something directly. She looked at me and asked if everything was okay between Ryan and me. Ryan was sitting right next to me. I felt him go very still. He said everything was fine and put his hand over mine and squeezed in a way that looked like affection from where his parents were sitting. I looked down at his hand and something in me just finished. Finished waiting, finished managing, finished sitting at tables performing fine. I moved my hand away and said no, everything was not okay. Carol leaned forward. Bill put his fork down. Ryan said my name once in that specific tone that on any other occasion would have made me stop. I didn't stop. I told them their son had been hurting me for most of our marriage and I had documentation and I was leaving. Ryan pushed his chair back and said I was having some kind of episode, that I'd been struggling mentally and he'd been worried about me for months. I told Carol and Bill I had photos on my phone and I could show them right now. Ryan stood up. Bill said, "Son, sit down." Ryan sat down slowly. Carol had both hands flat on the table looking at her son in a way I'd never seen before. She asked him directly if what I was saying was true. He said I was exaggerating and twisting things. Jen looked up from her plate and said, "Mom, I saw the photos." That was the whole room changing in one sentence. Carol looked at me and asked if I was safe right now. I told her I had somewhere to go tonight. Bill hadn't said another word. He was just looking at Ryan with an expression I didn't have a name for. Jen walked me to my car and held me without saying anything, and that was exactly right. Carol texted me the next morning and said their door was open to me and they were sorry. I don't know what Ryan told them after I left or what they chose to believe by morning. I know what I said was true, and I know I'd say it again. Now I'm stuck wondering if I'm the asshole.